Guys, North Korea have just sent 700 commandos to Burkina Faso to protect Ibrahim Traore from internal and external aggression. Guys, isn't this amazing? The question is, what's so special about this Ibrahim Traore? That North Korea is collaborating with, Russia to give protection to Ibrahim Traore. You know, I made a video this year. I said that Russia has already said they vow that they were going to stop the West from making Africa their feeding bottle, and they succeeded in rescuing Mali, Niger Republic, and Burkina Faso. And now North Korea is now collaborating with them, not because of recent Ibrahim Traore has escaped a teen assassination. So now North Korea has just said 700 commandos they just landed in Burkina Faso. Guys, I'm so proud of this guy. This guy, they see this guy as an asset. You understand? I don't want to say much. I want you to watch this video today. But before you watch this video, do me a favor by liking this video and please share until everyone see.
Real leaders are selfless people who always think about the progress of their country and not the progress of their bank account.
700 North Korean commandos have just landed in Burkina Faso, and they're not there for peacekeeping. They are here for Traore. But why would one of the world's most secretive regimes risk everything to protect an African president? And why now? Let's find out. On a continent where international military involvement usually comes stamped with NATO or French insignia, the image of North Korean boots hitting African ground was nothing short of surreal. And yet, that's exactly what happened. The government of Burkina Faso has confirmed the arrival of 700 elite North Korean commandos on its territory. Deployed in full gear, these forces didn't come as observers, advisors, or humanitarian staff. They arrived as active military personnel, embedded in a security operation to protect President Ibrahim Traore, reinforce his grip on power, and stabilize the state after a chain of failed coups and assassination attempts. The world has grown used to Russian involvement in African affairs, especially since Russia's Wagner-linked troops started replacing French forces in countries like Mali and the Central African Republic. But North Korea? That was new, that was historic, and it wasn't a leak or a secret. North Korea didn't deny it. State-aligned media from both Burkina Faso and Pyongyang confirmed the deployment. According to government officials, the mission is threefold: protect Traore and key members of the transitional government from internal and external threats, secure critical infrastructure, including military bases, airports, government buildings, gold refineries, and strategic communication hubs, train local security forces in the kind of tactics that North Korea has mastered over decades, from guerrilla warfare and close-quarter protection to surveillance, infiltration detection, and coup prevention. And this wasn't improvised. The arrival of the North Korean units was highly coordinated, following weeks of quiet diplomatic and military exchanges. Reports suggest that joint security simulations had already been run, infrastructure was prepared in advance, and key Burkinabe officials were briefed long before the public ever knew. This wasn't a reaction, it was a plan. But what triggered the activation of that plan? Behind closed doors, military insiders in Ouagadougou point to the rapid escalation of threats against Traore. In the past 6 months alone, Burkina Faso's intelligence services, with Russian assistance, uncovered 2 major coup plots, intercepted encrypted communications between foreign agents and rogue officers, and thwarted an armed attempt to seize a regional command post. The message was clear: someone powerful wants Traore gone, and each failure to remove him made the next attempt more aggressive. After the last plot unraveled, Burkina Faso quietly reached out to its newer allies for help. Russia was already present and involved, but the country needed a second layer of protection, one that could operate in the shadows, train elite guard units, and handle situations where traditional diplomacy failed. That's when North Korea stepped in. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Pyongyang reportedly offered not only troops but a full security package: encrypted communication systems, counter-surveillance tools, and field-tested doctrines designed to protect leaders under siege. While most of the world continues to view North Korea through the lens of missile tests and nuclear standoffs, the regime also possesses one of the most hardened internal security architectures on the planet. And now, Parts of that architecture are being installed in Burkina Faso. The Commandos are said to be stationed in undisclosed zones near the capital and the north of the country, regions most vulnerable to both insurgent attacks and internal destabilization efforts. They are believed to be working closely with Burkina Faso's Presidential Guard, integrating their techniques with local knowledge and training high-trust units to handle rapid response, loyalty vetting, and facility lockdowns. The implications are staggering. This marks the first known deployment of North Korean troops on African soil in such a direct combat support role in decades, and it comes at a time when the traditional Western security apparatus is being forcefully ejected from the region. France has already been told to pack up. The U.S. military presence is shrinking. ECOWAS, once considered the guardian of West African order, is no longer trusted by its member states. Into that vacuum walk the Russians, and now the North Koreans. Unlike Western nations that operate with loud press briefings and flashy banners of democracy and development, North Korea came in silent, swift, and unapologetic. And perhaps that's why they were welcomed. There were no NGOs, no lectures, no transition plans, just soldiers, loyalty, and the tools to stop a bullet before it's fired. But this move raises more than eyebrows. It raises deeper questions. Why would a state as isolated as North Korea risk international scrutiny to back a transitional regime in Africa? What does Pyongyang hope to gain from this? And how does this fit into the larger picture of Africa turning its back on the West? When North Korean boots hit the ground in Burkina Faso, the first question was obvious. Why? Why would one of the most secretive, isolated, and heavily sanctioned regimes in the world send 700 of its most elite commandos to protect a military leader in West Africa? It's not for headlines. North Korea doesn't care about Western media cycles. And it's not for peacekeeping, goodwill optics, or charity. The real answer is far more calculated and far more dangerous. This is a move about opportunity, survival, and power projection. Let's start with what North Korea gains tactically. For decades, Pyongyang has been isolated from traditional battlegrounds. Its military strategy is built on theory, simulation, and national drills, not recent international combat experience. But Burkina Faso gives them something rare, a live conflict zone outside Asia, where the battlefield is unpredictable. Insurgents move fast, coups are plotted in silence, and urban warfare merges with jungle terrain. In short, it's the perfect laboratory. By embedding elite forces in Burkina Faso, North Korea now has a testing ground for unconventional warfare tactics. Real-time data on how its surveillance systems and special operations protocols perform under pressure. A field environment to train in asymmetric combat, especially relevant for defending state leaders under siege. But this deployment isn't just about technical training, it's about ideological alignment. Pyongyang sees in Traore a figure who embodies the exact posture North Korea values: anti-imperialist, militarily self-reliant, and resistant to Western control. Traore isn't begging the IMF. He's not attending democracy summits in Brussels. He's not handing his country's intelligence to Washington or Paris. He's expelling foreign troops, standing up to ECOWAS, and refusing to be a proxy for Western interests. And that kind of leader is rare in today's global South, which makes him exactly the kind of person North Korea wants to invest in. For Kim Jong-un's regime, supporting Traore is about sending a message. We stand with those who stand alone. It's an ideological alliance, but it's also strategic. Because as the West loses ground in Africa, Pyongyang sees the chance to establish long-term influence in a region it was once excluded from. And influence means leverage. It means trade. It means access to Africa's vast resource networks, especially in gold, uranium, rare earth minerals, and agricultural trade. Diplomatic cables suggest Burkina Faso and North Korea have already held private talks on barter-based weapons and technology exchanges, bypassing the SWIFT system and international banking controls. In other words, both countries are building a new pipeline, one that doesn't flow through Washington, Brussels, or the World Bank. This also fits perfectly into North Korea's evolving foreign policy strategy, what analysts now call its Southern Opening Doctrine. In short, Pyongyang knows that trying to break through Western alliances in Asia is a dead end. But Africa is where the colonial order is collapsing in real time, and that makes it fertile ground for building a new global footprint. Burkina Faso is the start. but not the end. Consider this. In 2023, North Korea quietly resumed diplomatic relations with Guinea-Bissau and the Central African Republic. Its state media has praised Mali and Niger for rejecting foreign interference. And its UN diplomats have been meeting with non-aligned African blocs, offering low-cost security systems and mutual defense cooperation frameworks. So when 700 troops showed up in Ouagadougou, it wasn't random. It was part of a larger multi-phase plan to insert North Korea into Africa's future by supporting the regimes that refuse to kneel. And in return, Pyongyang is harvesting something it values even more than raw materials: legitimacy. Every time an African government salutes a North Korean soldier, it chips away at the narrative that Pyongyang is globally isolated. Every time North Korean trainers are thanked by foreign generals, it sends a signal to other unaligned nations: you don't need the West to survive or to win. This is soft power through hard boots. But perhaps the biggest gain for North Korea is untouchable space. Burkina Faso, having broken ties with France and ECOWAS, is now a kind of free zone, a territory where Pyongyang can operate military units without foreign surveillance, US drones, or Western sanctions enforcement. In a world where American satellites monitor every corner of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Burkina Faso offers shadows, places where drills can run, information can be shared, and tactics can evolve, all without Washington's eyes watching. And in return, Traore gets something just as valuable: survival. He now has a second layer of protection. If anyone wants to take him out, they no longer face just a young captain from Burkina Faso. They face an alliance. North Korea sent its commandos into a continent where it's barely had a footprint in decades. But this wasn't a leap of faith. It was a strategic insertion into the one region where global power is no longer settled, and where the battle for control is just beginning. But when North Korean boots landed in Burkina Faso, it wasn't just to guard doors and patrol palace walls. It was to help rebuild something much deeper: a national defense system built to resist infiltration, subversion, and betrayal. What many still don't grasp is that the presence of North Korean commandos is not an endpoint, it's a starting line. A foreign alliance alone can't secure a leader like Traore, who faces enemies not only outside his borders, but within his ranks. Protection is not the same as power, and survival means nothing if you're not also transforming the machinery that once made you vulnerable. That's exactly what's happening now inside Burkina Faso. The arrival of North Korean forces has triggered a full-scale military and intelligence recalibration, unlike anything the country has experienced before. Traore isn't just patching holes in the system, he's redesigning the blueprint. He knows what went wrong before: a fragmented army, divided loyalties, foreign-dependent chains of command, and intelligence units that leaked more than they detected. With that understanding, a new structure is emerging, one built for internal loyalty, strategic autonomy, and permanent resistance. The transformation began quietly. First, key personnel in sensitive posts were rotated out. Some were retired, others reassigned. These weren't public firings. They were surgical removals of weak links, often flagged through North Korean-assisted loyalty assessments and counterintelligence diagnostics. The goal? Ensure that no one near the presidency is secretly aligned with foreign interests. Next came the retraining of the Presidential Guard, not just in close protection, but in emergency state lockdown protocols, encrypted field communication, and identification of covert dissidents. This training goes far beyond conventional military drills. It's modeled after North Korea's leadership protection units, which operate under layers of secrecy, ideological immersion, and absolute discipline. Then came the restructuring of Burkina Faso's internal intelligence framework. Historically, intelligence in Burkina Faso was treated like an extension of foreign embassies. Reports were filtered, censored, or shared through third parties before reaching national leadership. Under Traore, that's over. Now, an entirely new domestic surveillance and alert system is being implemented, designed not to serve diplomatic interests but to defend the state from sabotage and internal coups. One senior official, speaking off the record, described the shift bluntly. Before, we were trained to observe for others. Now we observe for ourselves. The new doctrine emphasizes deep loyalty verification, local infiltration monitoring, and preemptive disruption of subversive plots. Agents are trained to think not just like soldiers, but like analysts and saboteurs, learning how to dismantle a threat before it ever fires a bullet. The restructuring also extends beyond the capital. In key provincial regions, especially those vulnerable to insurgent activity or paramilitary influence, parallel security chains are being installed, direct lines between the presidency and commanders in the field, bypassing bureaucracies that were once exploited by foreign actors to stall, confuse, or manipulate military responses. This dual system, one overt and one tightly confidential, is inspired by the North Korean defense model, where official channels exist but real power is rooted in personal loyalty networks and uncompromising internal cohesion. Traore isn't imitating Kim Jong-un. He's adopting what works, blending it with the Pan-African ethos of resistance, and applying it surgically to a state that once relied on foreign security scripts. This is not tyranny. It's defensive innovation, born from years of betrayal. Reports of attempted military infiltration have decreased. Multiple insider threats have been neutralized before they could act. Armed forces morale, once uncertain due to conflicting loyalties, is consolidating around a clear command structure that answers to Burkina Faso, not to Brussels or Paris. This doctrine is also quietly expanding. Within AES, the Alliance of Sahel States, joint meetings have been held to share these restructuring tactics with Mali and Niger, both of which face similar internal vulnerabilities. The idea isn't to copy North Korea, but to extract its lessons on self-reliance and state security and adapt them to a Sahelian context. In the end, the goal isn't to become more like Pyongyang, it's to become more like what Africa was never allowed to be: sovereign, secure, and immune to puppet strings. Traore knows the threats haven't disappeared. He knows coups don't need uniforms, and sabotage doesn't always come with a gun. But now, he's building a system that doesn't just respond to threats, it anticipates and eradicates them. And that changes everything. With North Korea and Russia now actively protecting African leadership, is a new power block emerging that could change the global balance. When a state survives repeated assassination attempts, dismantles coup plots, ejects Western troops, and rebuilds its intelligence system with the help of nations under sanctions, something bigger than internal reform is happening. Burkina Faso is no longer just defending itself. It's becoming the epicenter of a global power realignment, and the shockwaves are already rattling the old order. The deep restructuring of Traore's military and security system, assisted by North Korea and protected by Russian special forces, has done more than just secure a single leader. It has cracked open a new model of foreign alliance building in Africa, one that operates outside Western control, one that rejects the old dependency structures, and one that offers a viable alternative for other African nations who are tired of being lectured, looted, and left vulnerable. This is where the geopolitical consequences begin. With North Korea and Russia now both actively involved in defending a government in the Sahel, not with diplomats but with elite troops, encrypted tech, and military doctrine, a new axis is forming. And it's not symbolic. It's strategic, expanding, and fundamentally threatening to the post-colonial Western architecture that has governed Africa for decades. The formation of this axis isn't about ideology, it's about resistance and replacement. Nations like Burkina Faso are no longer just resisting Western interference. They are replacing Western infrastructure with alternatives, in intelligence, in military command, in diplomatic protocol, even in trade. This axis runs on mutual benefit, not moral superiority. Russia gets strategic access, diplomatic loyalty, and gold-backed trade relationships. North Korea gets field testing, global relevance, and a friendly platform to expand its influence in the global south. And countries like Burkina Faso get the one thing they were never truly offered by the West: uncompromising support without strings. This shift isn't staying confined to Burkina Faso. Mali and Niger, both members of the AES alliance, are already adopting similar playbooks. In Mali, joint security programs with Russian forces are being fused with cyber monitoring techniques modeled on North Korean approaches. In Niger, the government has opened channels to explore barter-based trade in military hardware and rare minerals, bypassing Western financial systems entirely. These moves aren't just reactive, they're coordinated. AES isn't a defensive bloc anymore. It's a foundation for a new geopolitical order, and nations across the continent are watching closely. Guinea, Chad, Sudan. Even countries with shaky transitions are beginning to ask a new set of questions. What if we don't need ECOWAS? What if we don't need the IMF? What if we protect ourselves together? The West is beginning to panic, but not because it fears coups, it fears irrelevance. Because if the Burkina Faso model spreads, of building internal stability with the help of Eastern partners instead of Western patrons, then the entire business model of Western foreign policy in Africa collapses. No more proxy control, no more conditional aid, no more regime change diplomacy cloaked in support for democracy. Instead, a continent that has long been divided by borders drawn in Europe is now being reconnected through a new political identity, built on autonomy, protection, and shared defiance. But it's not just about Africa. This emerging axis is quietly tying into broader movements in Asia and Latin America, where countries like Iran, Venezuela, and even parts of Southeast Asia are observing what's unfolding and seeing possibilities. Possibilities for a world no longer defined by Washington's approval, no longer limited by European alliances, and no longer regulated by institutions that serve the few at the expense of the many. What Burkina Faso is doing, with help from North Korea and Russia, is building a new language of power. One that says, we don't have to win Western favor to survive. We can survive without them. We can thrive without them. And if necessary, we can outlast them. This language is now being spoken across Africa, and the West doesn't know how to answer. Because for the first time, it's not being invited to translate or intervene. It's being left behind. That's why the 700 North Korean commandos matter. Not because of their uniforms, not because of their weapons, but because of what they represent. The end of Western monopoly over African security, and the beginning of a new order. One forged through fire, tested in silence, and now rising with purpose. Burkina Faso isn't a case study anymore. It's the prototype. Do you think the West will strike back out of jealousy or fear? What should we expect next? Let us know in the comments section. Will Traore stand his ground, or will the pressure force him to fold? Do you want to watch more videos like this one?